Authors around the world have been wondering about the most important debate in structure history. Which novel is more important? Is it Save the Cat or Story Genius? Today, they'll face off in an epic battle to see which one is best to help you plot your best story.
She really hyped me up there. I'm gonna win. Molly, just right now, we're just gonna get it out. You're wrong. Sorry.
Okay.
All right, let's begin. So, welcome to Semi Sages of the Pages. I'm Morgan.
This is Molly.
And I'm Teresa.
And
This
we are
is
so
Ella.
lucky to be talking to and Ella.
She's
And
here representing Save the Cat.
see, I mean, you already have to win. But so many of our amazing author friends are always asking us which of these two epic novels is best to use for plotting. And of course, it depends on your individual style. And of course, it depends on what jives with you. But we thought it would be fun to give you an overview of the pros and cons of these two epic approaches to structure to see how that could help you. So going first, who wants to go first?
Teresa. All right. So
representing Story Genius, Teresa, genius herself, Halverson.
So I'm going to be talking about Story Genius by Lisa Cron. And the great thing about Story Genius, I'm just going to give a really quick overview, is that it doesn't get into pantsing versus plotting or anything else. It gets into the why behind your characters and their motivations. So fabulous book. It actually includes a lot of exercises and kind of a fun story you can follow along with, where it's using her style and you can kind of see how it works. And the exercises include what's called scene cards. And so you can take those cards and you can use them to help plot not your chapters, but kind of your scenes, kind of what's happening in your novel. And so that's actually a system. The reason I decided to do Story Genius is I actually use that system when I'm starting my initial outlines. Over to you, Molly.
All right. So here's the best thing about Save the Cat by Blake Snyder.
It has a cat.
Well, yeah, this is a cat too. The best thing about the book is like you don't have to read the book. I say that, and I'm later these ladies are gonna like throw things at me and hit me with things, but the best thing about it is it gives you a very concrete, almost algorithmic approach to writing a story. And you don't have to read the whole book to get it or understand it, because they've made a bunch of like beat sheets and activities that you can do to follow along. So if you have a short attention span, if you find it hard to read craft books, or something that I have trouble with sometimes is I need like very concrete, specific things. Like it's hard for me. Like I understand the concept of Story Genius, and the why behind the characters, the motivations, what kind of critical misunderstanding do they have about the world? That's not the word they use, but
Misbelief.
Thank you. I understand that in concept, but that's hard for me to like then put into execution. It's hard for me to like be like, okay, then what do I do about that? Whereas Save the Cat, and I'm willing to admit that there are downsides to this, but Save the Cat has very, very specific, like, first you do this, then you do this. Then if your book is roughly 80,000 words, at the 15,000 word mark, you're going to do this. And that can be really, really helpful, especially if you haven't written a lot of novels, especially if you want to stay on track. You don't know how to like, you have an idea, but you're not sure how to execute it. You want some guidelines. You want a framework in place that if you follow, you will get a story that makes a promise to a reader and keeps that promise. And I think it's really great as well. The other thing that I use it for personally is when you get stuck. So sometimes you get stuck, especially in the muddy middle, and you're like, wrap, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Where's the story headed? How am I supposed to get there? And then you can pull up that guide and you can remind yourself like, okay, here's notionally where I am in the book. And oh, I need to have an inflection point. That's what I need to be doing. I need to be setting this up, and it can put your story back on track. So that is what I like about Save the Cat.
I like it. So, and for the record, I actually like Save the Cat as well.
And I like Story
but-
Genius. So
Yeah, no, they're great. They are really good.
I mean, we're
books.
in debate.
I know. I just couldn't resist. Molly, you're wrong. Where I disagree a little bit with kind of some of the stuff that Molly's saying is that same thing happens with Story Genius. It talks about how you can end up getting stuck. It ends in the middle. You're like, all this stuff happened. I know I need to get from A to C and B. I can't figure out how to make B happen. How do they get to C? And what Story Genius says is you always go backwards. You always go to the character's motivation. And since I am a very much driven, I'm a writer that really focuses on my characters, Story Genius helps me hone in on why my characters are behaving the way that they are and how that pushes the plot forward.
I can agree with that. I think that
And we're not debating very well.
oh, I know. Like, to me, the biggest downside of the biggest like pro on Save the Cat is it gives people framework, and it gives you a good framework, right? But if you're religiously using it, your stories can sometimes feel formulaic. And why are the characters making the choices that they're making might not always be clear. Like, you know what you're supposed to be doing, but are you paying attention to why those things are happening? Like, characters should make decisions that make sense, not just for the plot, but also make sense, like you said, for who they are, what their misbelief is, what they want, how they're going to get what they want, all that kind of stuff. You can have them make decisions, but any old decision might feel inaccurate to the character you created. It might further the plot, but it might not be true to your characters.
And that's what I was actually going to say, is that to me, the big difference between Story Genius and Save the Cat kind of tends to rely a little bit more on stuff happening to the characters. Whereas Story Genius tends to be a little bit more the characters made stuff happen. And either way is good. You actually, I mean, I know we're debating, but you kind of need a mixture of both.
And I think it also, like Morgan said, it depends on who you are, what your style is, and maybe where you're at in your writing journey. And, for me, when I tackle a bigger book, like the last book I wrote that was bigger and more extensive than I originally thought it was going to be, and it was more world building and stuff like that, I had to do different things that I had normally done, and I had to consult like different strategies because it was taking on a lot, and I needed to keep it contained. I needed to keep the story well and what I wanted to. But depending on what I'm writing, I have different resources. I have different goals on what I want the reader to feel and how I want the book to progress. And if I want it character or plot driven, all that kind of stuff influences the methodologies you use.
Yeah, I like it. Morgan. All right.
Now, what did we miss? What did we miss, Morgan? Because you are like the craft book expert.
No, by no means. I would just say that listening to your debate, this would be what I kind of took away from it. If you are already good at character backstory and you naturally develop well-rounded characters and you come with more of an understanding of who the character is and your characters are proactive, you should probably do Save the Cat, because it's going to make sure your pinch points are good and that your setting is supporting that character and that you're using pieces in the outside world and other conflict pieces besides just internal conflict to push the story forward. If on the other hand, you're really good at writing like action or fantasy and you know how to get to those fight scenes and you've got strong antagonists and your protagonists, but maybe your characters are coming across a little flat, a little comic bookish, or you frequently get comments in your writing that your main character isn't relatable, or they just for some reason don't like your main character, then I would highly recommend you go to Story Genius. So I would look at particularly the kind of feedback you get from your writing group and use that to push you to whichever story you think is maybe, whichever book would be addressing your weakness so that you can turn that weakness into a strength.
Oh, well
Beautifully
said as
worded.
always. All right.
Our last pitch here is we do understand there's more than these 2 craft books. There's
Yes.
a lot of methodologies out there in terms of structure. These are just 2 we picked, very popular ones that cover a lot.
And I have to say the one that I'm reading right now, because I got to look up the title. Sorry, whoever's editing this. I just got
I'm going to keep that.
Oh, we're going to keep that.
So I'm reading The Emotional Craft of Fiction by Donald Mass. And if you are a literary fiction writer and you really are going for emotive imagery and language, and you're an intermediate or advanced writer and you've kind of outgrown those 2, I can't recommend this enough. Like, I keep listening to different chapters over and over again, admittedly on my way to work. It's like you, I'm busy, and I know everyone who's listening to this is like, yes, we get it, we're so busy. But even just one chapter in that book is life-changing about sentence construction and emotiveness and linking character with plot. And I think it takes the basics, which are presented in Story Genius and Save the Cat, and I think it takes it to a new level.
Good way to put it. All righty, everybody. Why are you still here?
Go right.
Go right.
right. Reach your new level.
I'm all about the tongue today. I'm like, oh, it's my tongue.